She was forbidden to bear his child, yet love broke every rule. First contact, the crystal spires of Azurelia caught the twin suns' light, casting prismatic reflections across the capital city of Lumina. Princess Valyra stood at her balcony, her purple skin luminescent in the fading daylight, watching as the diplomatic vessels from Earth descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. Another human delegation, she sighed, her iridescent eyes following their trajectory. Father insists on these peace talks, yet the Council resists any meaningful alliance. Her handmaiden, Thelia, approached with ceremonial robes. The High Counselor Zerel requests your presence at tonight's welcoming ceremony, Your Highness. Valyra nodded, allowing Thelia to drape the shimmering fabric over her shoulders. The weight of tradition felt heavier than the ornate garments. As crown princess, she was bound by the sacred edicts, ancient laws that governed her people, including the most stringent. No royal Azurelian could bear a human child. Such unions were deemed sacrilege, believed to dilute their evolutionary gifts. Remind me of my duties, Thelia, Valyra said, her voice tinged with resignation. You are to observe only, princess. Engage in diplomatic pleasantries if addressed directly, but maintain appropriate distance. Thelia's voice softened. High Counselor Zerel specifically mentioned this. The grand reception hall buzzed with tension as Azurelian nobles and human diplomats circled each other with practiced caution. Valyra took her place beside her father, King Astralan, whose stern face betrayed nothing of his thoughts. When the human delegation entered, their commander stepped forward, tall with warm brown eyes that surveyed the room with intelligence rather than intimidation. Something in his bearing caught Valyra's attention immediately. I present Commander Ethan Reeves of the United Earth Alliance, announced the Royal Herald. Ethan bowed respectfully. On behalf of Earth, I bring greetings and hopes for continued peace between our worlds. The formalities proceeded, but Valyra found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Commander Reeves. Unlike previous envoys, he seemed genuinely interested in Azurelian culture, asking thoughtful questions about the artwork adorning the hall. Hours later, seeking respite from the stifling atmosphere, Valyra slipped away to the luminescent gardens, a sanctuary few humans were permitted to enter. The bioluminescent flora provided solace, their gentle glow soothing her troubled mind. I didn't realize anyone else would be here, came a voice from behind her. Valyra turned sharply to find Commander Reeves, standing respectfully at a distance. You shouldn't be here, she said, though without hostility. These gardens are sacred to my people. I apologize, Princess, he replied, making to leave. I was told I could view the gardens after the reception. I'll go. Wait, Valyra surprised herself with the word. Since you've already trespassed, you might as well learn why these gardens matter. Something about his genuine interest disarmed her usual caution. As they walked among the glowing plants, Valyra found herself explaining Azurelian botany, then history, then philosophy. Ethan listened with rapt attention, asking questions that revealed a depth of thought uncommon among the humans she'd encountered. Your world is extraordinary, he said finally, gazing up at the 3 moons overhead. But I suspect the most extraordinary things about it aren't in any diplomatic briefing. Such as? She asked. Such as why a princess would risk speaking alone with a human commander when it clearly violates protocol. Valyra smiled despite herself. Perhaps the same reason a commander would risk entering a sacred garden. Curiosity? He suggested. Something like that, she replied, suddenly aware of how close they stood. A distant chime signaled midnight, breaking the moment. I must go, Valyra said quickly. If we're discovered, will I see you again? Ethan asked. The question hung between them, laden with implications Valyra dared not examine too closely. It would be unwise, she answered, already turning away. That's not a no, Ethan observed quietly. Valyra paused, looking back at him over her shoulder. The South Gardens tomorrow at sunset. Come alone. As she hurried back toward the palace, Valyra's heart raced with emotions she had never experienced. Fear, excitement, and something far more dangerous that she wasn't ready to name. Forbidden affection. The South Gardens became their sanctuary over the following weeks. While the diplomatic missions dragged on with formal pleasantries and careful negotiations, Valyra and Ethan created their own world beneath the canopy of luminescent foliage. Your people believe humans would corrupt your bloodline? Ethan asked one evening as they sat beside a pool of glowing water, their reflections merging in its rippled surface. Valera nodded, her purple fingers tracing patterns on the stone bench between them. The sacred edicts claim a human Azurelian child born to royal blood would weaken our telepathic abilities and destroy our connection to the planet itself. Do you believe that? Ethan's question hung in the air. I was raised to believe it, she answered carefully. But lately, I've questioned many things I once accepted without thought. Their hands had drawn closer with each word until their fingers brushed, a simple touch that sent electricity through Valera's body. She didn't pull away. Commander Reeves, called a voice, shattering the moment. A human officer approached through the gardens. There you are. The Earth ambassador has been looking for you. Ethan stood quickly, his expression neutral but his eyes conveying apology to Valera. Lieutenant Marcus, this is Princess Valera. The lieutenant bowed stiffly. Your Highness. I apologize for the interruption. After Ethan departed with his colleague, Valera returned to her chambers only to find her aunt, High Counselor Zirel, waiting with a thunderous expression. You were seen with the human commander, Zirel stated flatly. Do you forget your position? Your responsibilities? We were discussing cultural differences, Valera replied, keeping her voice steady. Isn't that part of diplomacy? Diplomacy is conducted in formal settings, not private garden rendezvous. Zirel's eyes narrowed. Remember the fate of your cousin Nixara, who now lives in exile for similar indiscretions with an off-worlder. Later that night, a soft knock at her chamber door revealed her cousin's former handmaiden Lisa, with a sealed message. From Nixara, she whispered before disappearing down the corridor. The letter contained only coordinates and a time. The next day, Valera slipped away from her guards to a hidden communication hub in the lower city, where a holographic projection of Nixara, her purple skin now adorned with the markings of her mixed-species community, appeared before her. You're walking a dangerous path, cousin, Nixara said without preamble. But if your heart truly calls to this human, know that there are others like us. The laws are built on lies. Before Valera could question further, the transmission ended. That evening, when Ethan arrived at their meeting place, she noticed Lieutenant Marcus watching from a distance. Your friend doesn't approve, she observed. Marcus worries. He's seen officers court-martialed for less. Ethan's hand found hers in the shadows. He says I'm risking everything, my career, possibly even war between our worlds. Perhaps he's right, Valera whispered. Then why are we still here? Ethan asked, his face inches from hers now. Because some things matter more than ancient fears, she answered, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, hesitant, a crossing of boundaries both physical and cosmic. When they pulled apart, the luminescent flowers around them had brightened in response to Valera's emotions, bathing them in ethereal light. My father always taught me that peace requires understanding, Ethan said softly. I never imagined I would understand another world so completely through one person. On the night before the human delegation was scheduled to depart, they met one final time. The air was heavy with unspoken words and the knowledge of their imminent separation. I'll request an extended posting, Ethan promised. There are scientific exchanges being discussed. Valera stopped him with a kiss that conveyed everything she couldn't say. This time there was nothing hesitant about their embrace. The diplomatic restraint that had characterized their meetings dissolved under the light of 3 moons as hands explored and bodies pressed together. Later, as they lay entwined on Valera's cloak among the glowing flowers, she traced the contours of his face with trembling fingers. Whatever happens, she whispered, remember that tonight we rewrote the stars. Consequences. The human delegation departed as scheduled, but Ethan had secured a position with the scientific exchange program, allowing him to remain on Azurelia. Their meetings became more discreet but no less frequent, stolen moments in hidden corners of the capital city. 53 days after their first night together, Valera felt the change within her body. The telepathic connection Azurelians shared with their offspring was unmistakable. A new consciousness forming, a blend of her essence and Ethan's. She sat alone in her chambers, hands pressed against her abdomen, torn between terror and wonder. The sacred edicts were clear on the punishment for a royal who conceived with a human. permanent exile and removal from the succession. Yet beneath her fear bloomed an unexpected joy. "You seem distracted, Princess," observed Zarel during a council meeting that afternoon. "Perhaps you're unwell?" The High Counselor's penetrating gaze made Valeira wonder if her condition was somehow visible. Among Azurelians, pregnancy was typically announced within days of conception due to their telepathic awareness, but Valeira had shielded her mind carefully. "A slight headache?" "Nothing more," she replied. That evening, she met Ethan in an abandoned observatory in the old quarter of the city. "There's something I must tell you," she began, but the look on his face stopped her. "We've been discovered," Ethan said grimly. "Marcus intercepted communications. The Earth Alliance is ordering my immediate return, citing diplomatic complications. They're sending a transport tomorrow." Valeira's heart sank. "How much time do we have?" "Hours at most," his voice broke. "I won't go. I'll resign my commission if necessary." "There's more," she whispered, taking his hand and placing it on her abdomen. "We've created something impossible." Ethan's eyes widened as understanding dawned. For a moment the world seemed to stop as the full implications washed over them both. "A child," he breathed. "Our child. A child forbidden by every law of my people," Valeira added. "A child who will change everything." Their planning was interrupted by the sudden blare of alarms throughout the city. Through the observatory's windows they watched as royal guards swarmed the streets below. "They know," Valeira realized with horror. "Someone has sensed the child's presence." They fled through back passages Valeira had learned as a child, but at the city's edge they found themselves surrounded. King Estrellan himself stood at the front of the royal guard, his face a mask of cold fury. "Father," Valeira began, but he raised a hand to silence her. "You have betrayed your bloodline and your world," he declared. "The human will be removed from our planet immediately. You will return to the palace for purification." Valeira felt ice in her veins. Purification was the euphemism for terminating an unauthorized pregnancy. "I will not," she stated, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "This child breaks no natural law, only the artificial boundaries we've created out of fear." "Take them," the king ordered. As guards advanced, a sudden commotion erupted from behind them. Lieutenant Marcus appeared with several human soldiers and a surprising ally, Nixara, along with members of her exile community. "The transport is waiting," Marcus told Ethan. "We need to move now." In the chaos that followed, Valeira and Ethan were separated. She found herself pulled aboard a human vessel with Marcus while Nixara led Ethan through another escape route. "He made me promise to get you to safety," Marcus explained as the ship lifted off. "There's a colony on Verulian Prime where Azurelian exiles and humans live together. Your cousin has arranged sanctuary there." Valeira pressed her face to the viewport, watching her homeworld shrink beneath them. Somewhere on that surface, Ethan was fighting to reach her. "What have I done?" she whispered, hands protectively covering her abdomen. "Something brave," Marcus answered unexpectedly. "Something that might change everything." As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Valeira felt a strange peace settle over her despite the uncertainty. The child within her, evidence of a love that transcended species and tradition, represented not an end but a beginning. Rebellion of the heart. The settlement on Verulian Prime existed in the shadow of ancient ruins, a community of exiles and dreamers living proof that Azurelians and humans could coexist harmoniously. For 3 months, Valeira found refuge among them, her growing belly a testament to the future she and Ethan had created. Nixara governed the settlement with wisdom born of her own exile. "Your child isn't the first," she revealed one evening as they sat beneath the planet's ringed moons. "Only the first of royal blood in generations." "What do you mean?" Valeira asked, setting aside the star chart she'd been studying. Nixara led her to a subterranean library filled with artifacts that had been smuggled from Azurelia over decades. The sacred edicts weren't always so restrictive. There was a time when our people celebrated unions with humans. Ancient holographic records showed mixed families, their children displaying unique abilities that combined the best of both species. Most shocking was a royal portrait from 5 centuries earlier, a purple-skinned queen with a human consort and their 3 children. Queen Alara and her human mate, Nixara explained. The golden age of Azurelia coincided with these unions, not with their prohibition. But the edicts claim, the edicts were rewritten after the War of Separation. A faction led by Counselor Merrick feared human influence and fabricated evidence that mixed offspring weakened our bloodlines. Nixara's expression hardened. Your own great-grandfather perpetuated these lies to maintain power. The revelation left Valera reeling. All this time, we've built walls based on falsehoods. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Valera emerged from the library to find a small spacecraft landing in the settlement center. And emerging from it, battered but alive, was Ethan. Their reunion was tearful, his hands caressing her swollen abdomen with wonder. I thought I'd lost you both, he whispered against her hair. How did you escape? She asked. Your father? Ethan replied, surprising her. He came to my cell the night after your departure. He said nothing, just deactivated the force field and led me to the ship. The news stunned Valera. Had her father had a change of heart? Or was it a more calculated move? Their joy was short-lived. 3 days later, Royal Azurelian vessels appeared in Verulian skies. Instead of attacking, however, they transmitted a message. High Counselor Zarel had seized power in Valera's absence, declaring King Astralan unfit to rule after he confessed to helping Ethan escape. The council had voted to bring Valera back, not as a criminal but as a bargaining chip in Zarel's consolidation of power. She'll use you to legitimize her coup, Nixara warned, and the child will be taken for scientific study. That night, surrounded by their allies, Valera and Ethan made their decision. We won't run anymore, Valera declared. These records prove the edicts are built on lies. We must return and reveal the truth. Not just for us, but for all the families torn apart by these false boundaries. Ethan took her hand. It's too dangerous. The child will never be safe until we change the system that threatens their existence, she finished. Besides, I've received messages from those still loyal to my father. Not everyone supports Zarel's coup. Lieutenant Marcus, who had remained at the settlement as their liaison to Earth, stepped forward. The Earth Alliance is concerned about Zarel's militaristic stance. They've offered diplomatic support if you return as the legitimate heir. The plan took shape. They would return to Azurelia, not as fugitives, but as representatives of a coalition seeking truth and reconciliation. The settlement's mixed families would accompany them as living proof of what was possible. As their ship approached Azurelia's atmosphere 1 week later, Valera felt the child stir within her, now 6 months grown and strong with both human resilience and Azurelian sensitivity. Whatever happens, Ethan said, standing beside her at the viewport, remember that we've already won. We created something they said was impossible. Valera placed his hand on her belly, where their child kicked in response to its father's voice. Not just a child, she said softly. A revolution. The capital city of Lumina came into view below them, its crystal spires now surrounded by military vessels. As they began their descent, Valera squared her shoulders, ready to fight for a future without boundaries, a future worthy of the life growing within her. New dawn, the Grand Council chamber fell silent as Valera entered, her pregnant form a visual challenge to centuries of doctrine. Beside her walked Ethan, with Nixara and representatives from both the settlement and Earth Alliance following. The assembled counselors shifted uncomfortably in their ornate chairs, while Zarel's face darkened with fury from the high seat. You dare bring your abomination before the sacred council? Zarel hissed. I bring truth before those who claim to serve it, Valera countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. She nodded to Nixara, who activated a projection device. The chamber filled with the ancient records, holographic evidence of Azurelia's forgotten history, when humans and Azurelians lived and loved together openly. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as royal portraits from centuries past revealed mixed families presiding over the planet's most prosperous era. These records were suppressed, Valera announced, because they contradicted the narrative that kept certain families in power. My child is not an abomination but a return to our true heritage. Zarel stood, her ceremonial robes billowing. These are clever forgeries. Guards seized the traitors, but the royal guards hesitated, their captain looking uncertainly between Zarel and Valera. From a side entrance, a frail figure emerged. Supported by medical attendants, King Astralan weakened but determined. My daughter speaks the truth, he declared. I discovered these same records years ago but lacked the courage to challenge tradition. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Some counselors demanded order, while others called for immediate acceptance of the evidence. Through the commotion, Valera noticed several counselors slipping away, Zirel's closest allies abandoning her as the tide turned. Zirel, seeing her support crumbling, made a desperate move. She lunged toward Valera with a ceremonial blade, eyes wild with the fury of threatened power. Ethan moved with soldier's reflexes, placing himself between the blade and Valera. But before either could be harmed, Zirel froze mid-stride, suspended by an invisible force. The entire chamber fell silent as they turned to the source. A young girl, no more than 12, with purple skin and human eyes, her hand extended toward Zirel. "Enough," the child said, her voice echoing with unusual resonance. "Who is this?" Valera asked, staring at the girl who now slowly lowered the immobilized Zirel to the floor. Nixara stepped forward. "My daughter Elora, one of the children your laws would declare impossible." The demonstration of Elora's abilities, telekinesis more powerful than any pure-blooded Azurelian had displayed in generations, rendered the final argument against mixed heritage obsolete. In the days that followed, the council underwent its most significant reformation in centuries. King Astralan abdicated in favor of a new system of governance, a shared council of humans and Azurelians, with Valera and Ethan appointed as transitional leaders. 1 month later, under the light of 3 moons, Valera gave birth to a daughter. The child had her mother's purple skin with subtle iridescence and her father's warm brown eyes. A perfect blend of 2 worlds once thought incompatible. They named her Nova, for the bright explosion that creates new stars. On her naming day, representatives from Earth and Azurelia gathered in the luminescent gardens now open to all. The old prohibitions were formally dissolved as Nova was presented as a symbol of the new era. "She will face challenges we cannot foresee," Ethan said privately to Valera, as they watched delegates from both worlds admire their daughter. "Being first is never easy." "She won't be alone," Valera replied, nodding toward where Nixara stood with Elora and other mixed heritage children who had emerged from hiding across the planet. "And she'll know that her existence helped reshape 2 worlds." 5 years passed. The integration was not without difficulties. Centuries of separation had created deep cultural divides, but the presence of children like Nova continuously reminded both species of what could be gained through unity. On Nova's 5th birthday, Valera took her daughter to the highest spire of the royal palace. Together they watched as the first joint Azurelian human exploration vessel launched from the spaceport below, bearing a crew of scientists from both worlds and several of mixed heritage. "Where are they going, Mother?" Nova asked, her small purple hand pointing to the ship as it disappeared into the atmosphere. "To find other worlds," Valera answered, "to share what we've learned about how different peoples can grow stronger together." Nova considered this with the solemn thoughtfulness that often surprised those who met her. Then she smiled, a radiant expression that reminded Valera so much of Ethan. "Maybe they'll find someone new to love, like you and Father did." Ethan joined them, wrapping an arm around Valera's waist as they watched the ship's final glimmer fade into the sky. "I still remember the first night we met in these gardens," he said. "You told me it would be unwise to see you again." "It was the best unwise decision I ever made," Valera replied, leaning into his embrace as Nova giggled between them. Below, the city of Lumina stretched out, its architecture now a blend of Azurelian crystal spires and human-designed structures. Markets bustled with visitors from both worlds, and in schools and academies, children of all heritages learned, together, what had begun as a forbidden love had become the catalyst for a transformation. Neither Valera nor Ethan could have imagined that first night beneath the luminescent blooms. Their daughter, once considered impossible, dangerous, forbidden, now represented the future of 2 species who had discovered that the greatest strength comes not from separation, but from the courage to intertwine their destinies. As the twin suns set on Azurelia, casting the now familiar golden light across their shared world, Valera knew with absolute certainty that love had indeed been the strongest rebellion of all, and now it was their greatest legacy.